Today is March 21st. It's Saturday again. I'm heading to the Central Park. Today we'll have a special guest. His name is Barrett. Probably it's Barrett and his son. These guys are from UK. They also run a YouTube channel in China. Haven't done a collaboration before, so I guess today it's gonna be my first time doing some collaboration on my channel. Yeah, let's see how it goes.
A few moments later.
Hey guys, this is Simon. Today we have a special guest. Lee has been living in China for almost 12 years.
12 years,
12
yeah,
years.
almost 12 years.
And he is originally from the United Kingdom. And so today we're just gonna have a casual chat. Lee, why don't you tell a little bit more about yourself?
Okay, so back in the UK many years ago, I graduated as an electronics engineer. And after that, I sort of did various jobs in electronic engineering. Then I had a couple of businesses of my own. And I'm very interested in electronics and design and technology, and China was the sort of real place. I started initially to come to China because I was doing a manufacturing project with a company in Shanghai, and I come to visit them, and I liked China. I really fell in love with Shanghai, and then I kept coming back more. So for about the first 8 or 10 years I was spending sort of 3 months in China, 1 month back to the UK, 2 months in China, maybe a couple of months back in the UK, flip-flopping maybe 4 or 5 times a year. Then 2 years ago I came to permanently live in Shenzhen.
Okay.
And initially I was sort of selling things back to the UK from Shenzhen, sort of mobile phone accessories. I still do a little bit of that, but now I'm trying to really just concentrate on doing YouTube. It's something I enjoy, although it doesn't make a huge amount of income right now. I'm using my savings to live on, because actually I can live a lot cheaper here in China than I can in the UK. There's many things that are much cheaper here. You know, transport and housing and things like that are much cheaper here in China, so that's why I choose to stay here.
Okay, great. So you just mentioned something like you like about China. So actually my next question is that, like, what will be the top 5 things you enjoy when you live in China that you probably don't have it when you are living back in the United Kingdom?
Okay, so right, the first one is cities is transport. It's so easy to get around because the cities are so big here. They have fantastic transport infrastructure. All the big cities have a metro system, so and how cheap that is. So for example, in UK it's only really London that has an underground system. It's very old, it's very expensive. Secondly, I grew up in a city. I grew up near a place called Birmingham in the UK, and I like a city. Now previously when I was living in the UK, I moved out of the city. I lived somewhere more rural, so, and that's a problem because you need a car. Now there's no problem with having a car, but you want to get something, you've got to drive. Whereas here I can wake up at my apartment, I can walk out the door. There's so many places to buy food, there's convenience stores everywhere, and things like that. Another thing, number three, I like the climate in Shenzhen. It's a little bit too hot in the summer and humid, but you know, I do sometimes miss the seasons, but I like the warm climate. Even in the winter time in Shenzhen, it's you know, it's just not too hot. It's just nice. So actually, really, Shenzhen only has kind of 2 seasons. It's like summer and spring. So then moving on, the fourth thing I really like about China is the convenience. Like, it just blows my mind how advanced it is. To like, we have an app here that pretty much everybody has on their phone, like WeChat, and you can do just everything.
Literally everything.
Pay for things, and unlike the West, where it took a long time to come in, and older people are not very into that technology. I see here, even like my partner's grandmother, she's like FaceTiming on WeChat with her family and friends. Now you can go to like a little street store or a huge corporation and pay with WeChat, and you can order food, a taxi, and
I think definitely in terms of like technology wise, even my grandmother, like she was already like past 80, and they also have a WeChat group, and like everyone was on that group, and you know, keep posting like image, you know,
absolutely amazing. And I guess the fifth thing is the people to me here, or all the people I've met, have been very friendly, and just the security of the city and the friendliness of the people. Now I know a lot of people in the West will say, oh, it's because you're a foreigner, you're treated special. Now I agree with that to some extent. If you go to a little bit more rural China, so I've been to a couple of sort of more rural places, and yeah, people, it's like they stare at you, or because they haven't experienced much of us. But in the big cities, you're just like anybody else, because all the Chinese in Shanghai, Shenzhen, Beijing, they're quite used to foreigners. They don't treat you any different. So these are, you know, the 5 things that I think are, you know, are just brilliant. I love a city life.
Okay, that's great.
So, that's, really
so now, Lee, I'm gonna challenge you a little bit.
Okay.
So you mentioned the things you like about China, but can you like name something you not so much fan of China, and maybe they can improve in the future? So I would like to hear it from a foreigner perspective.
So my first thing I think is, it's actually food. That's not to say I don't like Chinese food. I think it's because of the part of China I'm currently living in. So in Shenzhen, they like very salty food.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, and they like a lot of noodle, which is a water-based noodle. Whereas I don't like kind of water-based
You mean like soup noodles? You don't like soup noodles?
I don't like soup noodles. I like kind of dry noodles, like a chow mein kind of.
Oh, chow mein, okay.
Yeah. And I also am not very keen on boiled rice. I prefer chow fan instead of mi fan.
Okay.
So I sometimes struggle a little bit with the food. Now Shanghai was a very different story, because in Shanghai you have a much sweeter tooth. Yeah. For example, some favourite places of mine in Shanghai when I was here is a bakery called Paris Baguette, and they sell lovely cakes and pastries there. It's much more difficult to find this in Shenzhen. So actually coming back to Shenzhen for a while, I'm looking forward to tasting some of this. And actually I find different parts of China very different. So the one other thing that I find that I dislike about China is if you go to a public toilet, the hygiene is not so great. From a point of view, you don't have anywhere to dry your hands, and normally you wash your hands and it's only cold water. It's actually quite useless. And I noticed when I was in somewhere, still people spit a lot.
Oh yeah, that's definitely a huge part.
But again, I think if you go back 20 or 30 years when I was growing up in the UK, this was also the case. I think what's happened in China, that part of China has moved very, very quickly. So the infrastructure and the technology has moved very, very quickly. But I think some social things have struggled to keep up with this. So I think these things will happen, but it will just take a little longer time. Also, one other thing that and it's not something I don't like. Again, I think it's down to education. I don't notice this so much in Shenzhen and Shanghai. I notice actually this more in Guangzhou and some more rural places where people will push and shove. So if you're waiting for a bus, like in my country, you're used to waiting in line, and when it's your turn to get on, you get on. Whereas here, I sometimes wait for the bus, the doors open, everybody just piles into the bus. Yeah, but I think this is because things in China are so much more competitive. Yeah. So people think if I don't get it, I will lose out. So they're thinking a little bit more just about themselves.
Yeah, I agree with you on this part.
Yeah.
Like, people from the older generation, they always have that kind of mindset, like, because we have only limited resource.
Yes.
If you don't push yourself, if you don't be aggressive, you're not going to get it. You will get left behind, because it does happen.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, right now I think the younger generation are more civilized.
I mean, this is something I've really noticed more so. Of the 3 cities I've spent a lot of time in, I notice this more in Shenzhen, because Shenzhen has a very young population. Yeah. And it's quite a highly educated population. Whereas if you look at Guangzhou and Shanghai, they have many more locals. Actually in Shenzhen, there's not many locals.
Almost like 90% like they are immigrants from other places.
Everywhere, And because it's the technology hub, there are many young people. I guess I don't know the average age of the population there, but I think it's very young. Whereas in Guangzhou, it's much older and much more locals. And this is something I even noticed if you go to Shenzhen, although it's right next to the border of Hong Kong, nearly everybody there speaks Mandarin. Whereas you go to Guangzhou and nearly everybody speaks Cantonese there. Yeah, so this is the sun. So other things, let me think what I don't like. Not much more.
Not much? Okay.
No, I think when I do my videos about China, I'm like to see the positives. Of course, I understand there's negatives. There's negatives in every country. And it would be very easy to talk about the negatives, but I'm really not interested in it. I want to talk about positive things, because I think the big problem is many Westerners who think negatively about China have actually never been here. So I want to show them the good things about China.
Do you have any like very memorable experience when you're in China? Like until this day you can still remember, okay, I know I have this funny story back then, like
maybe not so much funny, but
story.
some of my favorite memories in China when I first arrived then I was 10 or 12 years younger, so I was a little bit more in going out. And I have some very fond memories of being in Shanghai. I lived in the Jing'an area. I made some good friends there. We would meet in a bar every Friday or Saturday night, and we would just drink a few beers and chat. We wouldn't get drunk, I'm not into drinking too much, but just chat with friends, both Chinese friends and people from all over the world. And I have some really fond memories of that time, and it was my first time that I'd come to China, and I have memories of, I couldn't believe how, wow, what a cool city this is, It's like fantastic. And I saw, many changes over that 8 years in Shanghai, buildings being renovated and new buildings springing up everywhere. So I just have some really fond memories of that time in China. And obviously, I then lived in Guangzhou and have memories of there, and now Shenzhen. And one of the things I really want to do in the next year or so is I'd like to explore other cities in China and more rural parts of China to show people in the West what these cities are like too.
Okay. Another question I would like to ask is, personally I noticed like recently there are like a trend that foreigners are leaving China. Just based on my own observation, I do notice some of my foreign friends, they have moved to another place, and a lot of like factory they have relocated to like Vietnam. So do you notice like there's a trend that foreigners leaving China?
It's a little bit, yeah. It's not something I've really focused on. I think there's two reasons. I think a lot of foreigners will come here, and I'm a member of some WeChat groups, and I see this a lot. They think that they should come here and everything should be like what it is in their home country, and they seem to get frustrated sometimes because things are different in China, and instead of accepting it and embracing it, as in when you're in Rome, do as the Romans do, they try to push back against it. And I think ultimately the ones that leave are those that can't accept they're actually living really as a guest in that country. I would be annoyed if people come to England and go, oh, we don't like the way you do this, we want to change it. And I sometimes see those foreigners, they think that everything should be the same here. They don't appreciate that it's a different culture, a different way of thinking. When I first came to China, I was doing a lot of business in Guangzhou, doing a lot of purchasing, and I would get very frustrated by some little things. So let me give you an example. So let's say you order 18 items, right? You say, I want 6 red, 6 blue, 6 yellow. In England, if the yellow was out of stock, the supplier would call you, oh, we don't have yellow, what do you want to do? Do you want a green instead, or do you want to just leave the yellow? Then I'd make a decision. Whereas in China, they would ship the goods to you and they would just add green because they thought you want green. So I thought, I don't want the green one. Then you would have to spend maybe 2 hours arranging to send it back, and so this used to really frustrate me. But I find it's just the way. And then another little thing, I would be dealing with a factory, and I'll go, oh, you can do this, right? And yeah, may. And then maybe 1 week before delivery, oh, we have some problem, we can't do this. Because I felt they just didn't want to say no, that we can't do this. But once you start to understand this is the way and know how it works, my frustration calmed down, and now I'm much more. Then you mentioned about factories moving to Vietnam. I think actually a lot of this is the sort of factories that may be producing the lower value items.
Yeah.
So when I first came here, there was a lot of clothing factories in the Guangdong region, and many of those now have gone. And many people say, oh, all the jobs will be lost, but actually these jobs are being replaced by more higher skilled jobs. And I think one thing that's interesting, I did put a video on my channel about this, about China are facing a crisis of the amount of population they will have to work. And I think the people here have realized this. So I noticed that in automation of factories here, they're leading the world.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that will keep them competitive. You know, and many factories close down because the labour costs have risen, because people are now having a better life. But I think they're responding to that. So the really cheap manufacturers move into places like Vietnam, Bangladesh. But I think a lot of the higher tech will never, because they just don't have the supply chain and infrastructure in these companies. You know, China has a fantastic supply chain infrastructure which is very difficult to replicate in a short amount of time in other countries. What Chinese people see when they see that other countries have much more of a democratic society than here. Do you think that's an issue for many Chinese people, or do you think Chinese people just accept what they have and they're okay with that because their lives are getting better?
To be honest, I don't have any sufficient information, because people in China usually don't talk about this. Even in private, you won't talk about like what kind of system. Sometimes do, but barely. But so I would say the majority of Chinese people, I won't even be able to say majority because I don't have sufficient data. I know a lot of people, they are still pretty content with what they have right now, because in reality, like for the past 30 years, people's life does improve a lot. Like just take the majority of my family members, they are pretty satisfied with the current situation. Like life is improved, they move to a bigger place. And like 30 years ago, they don't have a sewage system. They have to go somewhere and dump all their waste in a certain limited time. But now we have all this kind of stuff. You know, public infrastructure has been hugely improved. Skyscraper pops out everywhere, right? So yeah, I would say a lot of people, they see the improvement, but I think younger generation, some of them, they might want to go a little bit further, like to be more involved in making the decision for the country. The government may be able to become more and more transparent, so there will be less, you know, corruption in the future. So yeah, a lot of people, they will also would like to enjoy a higher degree of freedom of expression, like more movie or like more TV show can you know, be created. Now, so far I don't think we have a lot of, you know, good TV show or like movie across the world. So but in the future maybe we can have of these when we have a higher level of freedom of expression. So Lee, did you watch any like Chinese like TV series or movie? Actually,
I don't. I'm a little embarrassed because although I've been here so long, I haven't really learnt much Chinese. And I'm a little bit embarrassed about that. I'm really not very good at languages, but because my partner speaks very good English, we always communicate in English. And I always seem to make excuses not to learn Chinese, and I'm a little bit embarrassed about that. But so I haven't watched much Chinese.
That's fine.
So go on. What do we do?
So I think we're just gonna wrap this up. So the final question. So you have been living in the UK for like almost your entire life. You have been spending your considerable amount of time in China. So final question is that what do you think like the UK can learn from China, and what China can maybe gain some insight from the UK?
Okay, so I think what England can learn from China is to spend more investment on infrastructure. A lot of the infrastructure in the UK is very old. You take the underground system in there, but I think that the problem is because we have a social system in the UK which is very expensive. The government just don't have the money to spend on infrastructure. Actually, we rely on countries like China investing to build some of this infrastructure. And I think that needs to change. But because we have a system of government the way we do, No government. We have some looming problems, a pensions crisis because we have a state pension, so there's just not enough money there because population is getting older.
But just one quick question.
Yeah,
Speaking to
sure.
the pension system, like, what will be the average like pension for a like retired older people?
Oh, okay. I don't know.
It's kind of tricky.
I can't remember. It's not massive, but it's enough to live on.
I see.
I don't know the numbers off the top of my head.
Okay.
I can find out, and you can put that in.
Yeah,
for
maybe
you.
we can drop
Yeah,
it somewhere.
we can drop somewhere. I
Yeah.
can get those figures,
Okay.
but everybody gets this state pension,
I see.
and because the population are getting older, this burden is growing,
I see.
and it needs addressing. The system needs to have some change. So right now, it's now you can't retire and get your state pension until you're 67
67
for a
okay.
man. You know, a few years ago it was 65, and I think that will keep moving out. So I suspect in the next 10 years it will be 70.
Yeah.
And this problem needs addressing, but it's a very unpopular decision to make. So the party who make this decision will probably not get re-elected. So
I see.
the party is not willing to make these hard decisions. So that's a sort of thing there. But infrastructure is the main one. I just wish we had more funds to spend on infrastructure, because infrastructure creates mobility, it creates jobs, and you know, it generally improves the economy.
I see.
What I think China could learn from England. Now, although our political system is not perfect, I think the big thing about the Chinese system is the transparency, and I think that needs to be addressed here. I don't necessarily think we need to be the same as the West, because I think they have many issues as well. It's not fair to say that China has issues and Western doesn't. But I think we need to be somewhere in the middle, and I do think, as we mentioned in the video on my channel with the Huawei situation, one of the reasons is the transparency of the government, which scares Western things from this. So if we could get more transparency, I think that would be a good thing.
Okay, great. Well, I guess that's pretty much it. It's the first time we do some collaboration. Maybe in the future we can do more of this kind of stuff. It's pretty fun. I really enjoyed this kind of experience.
Me too.
So,
it's the first time we've done it as well. So it is
Alright
good,
guys, I think that's pretty much it. We also did another video in your channel.
Yeah, so we'll put the links to that below, and the same on, you know, we'll reciprocate.
And if you like the video, please subscribe or hit the like button, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.
Take care.